tuning in here today, and just want to thank also all my panelists here. Obviously, a great group. I'm honored to be surrounded by a very insightful and also accomplished group of panelists here. So I'll just allow them to self-introduce themselves, and I'll start off with Darren down at the far end, and work his way back over here to Sean.
Keep it quick. Darren Glover. I'm VP of Gaming at Vayner Sports. Recovering basketball addict, as I describe myself. My last 9 to 10 years have been all around working with athletes, creators, brands, communities, kind of everything that intertwines together between athletes and media and entertainment and fans, how they all interact within each other, and then how brands and properties can get access to those fans.
I'm John Antonelli. I'm a senior at Duke. Massive sports fan. Been building audiences on social since I was like in 8th grade. From Chicago, so big Bulls fan. I'm also building a social sports data platform. We connect and engage fans around every live sports moment. And just been doing that since I've been a freshman here, so the past 3 years.
My name's Barry Gorse. I'm from Denver, Colorado. Consult on some projects, Web3 projects with Merkle Mountain. I'm a partner. But really, I'm an angel investor. I've been investing in the blockchain space for a decade now. Also sit on the board of Opolis Stewardship Board. Back here is Bill Warren, another member of Opolis. We have some members of Opolis here. Great service if you're in the Web3 space. I'm also the producer of a Bitcoin mining documentary. I hope everyone will check out Dirty Coin, it's called. Comes out later this year or early next year. We have a big event at Bitcoin Miami. If you're there, get in contact with me. From the sports side, I was a professional hockey player for 8 years. Unfortunately, a career minor leaguer. Went to camp with the Pittsburgh Penguins several times. Both years they won the Stanley Cup. And you can watch me eat shit on American Ninja Warrior if you like that TV show. I fell on several obstacles.
Cool, hey everybody, my name is Sean Kelly. I serve as the Associate General Manager for the influencer team at Teamworks. Teamworks is actually a company that was founded here on campus at Duke, so excited to be here with everybody. I'm from Raleigh, so just up the street, not too far. And specifically our influencer product is serving athletic departments and pro teams with name, image, and likeness. So it's an ever-changing space and looking forward to the conversation.
Yes, definitely think we're gonna have a great conversation, and I think I'll start it off first with Barry, just asking you, as you mentioned, being a former professional athlete and now entering into the space of Web3 and blockchain, could you just kind of touch on your journey as far as transitioning from an athlete to now being an investor, and kind of what sparked your motivation or journey to get into the space?
Yeah, I started investing in crypto. I started investing in Bitcoin in 2013, invested in the creation of Ethereum in 2014, and a lot of other notable projects like Answers, which is now Neo. So I'm always trying to be early to things in the space, and have been trying to do so the last decade. I think one neat thing about sports that I learned in my professional career and related to investing is that I think people often misperceive risk. If you look at the most successful athletes, they take very high risks, and I think in investing, if you look at some people who have done really well in life, they're very open to taking very high risks. And I think this might fall on deaf ears here because we all love Web3 and are into crypto, but I think a lot of people are missing out on massive opportunities for maybe perceiving greater risk in investing in crypto than there really is. And I also learned playing professional sports that it really pays to be aggressive. So that could be showing aggressiveness in your research and just looking for projects, going deep into the altcoin forest and trying to find something that's maybe ranked 500 something on CoinMarketCap, and really doing your research and trying to find great opportunities. I think some things I learned in sports.
And so one of the biggest aspects I think that's very relatable to not only crypto, but especially with NFT projects is having, that community and having the audience to ultimately attract the attention, because as the last panel mentioned, attention is currency in today's age. So John, a question I wanted to ask you for someone who, as you mentioned, has a lot of experience, building an audience and building a community. For you, what's kind of the principles of building an audience, and also just the ultimate value for you as far as in sports, but also really in any business, just the value of building that audience and that community?
Yeah, I think actually caring is like it's something that's super underrated. And one of the ways you can show that through social is it's pretty practical. It's DMing, the fans that are engaging with your content, the fans that are following you on social. I think athletes, some of them do a great job on Twitter of engaging with fans through like tweeting back at them, replying to the tweets that are somewhat negative. But I think there's value with when you have that audience, then you can start pulling out the true fans through either just engaging with them or having a community like Discord set up. I think another thing that I'm pretty passionate about is cultivating from an audience, cultivating a community. So using free platforms like Discord, which is a perfect community-centric platform where you can, like athletes, I don't think they take advantage of Discord as much as they could. But I mean, there's a lot of value. Once you have that community, then you can start engaging them with, if you have an NFT project, if you have different projects that align with your the value of like yourself or whatever. So yeah, I think just from speaking from like someone who's built audiences on social, I think there's value in an audience, but actually caring and then pulling out those true fans, that's where you get real value. Because I'd rather have 1,000 true fans than 100,000 people that just kind of swipe through my content and engage with what I'm talking about, but they don't actually know me or know my values. So I think pulling out those true people is like super valuable.
And so for both, this question will be for both Darren and Sean. You guys both have a lot of experience working with both, esports athletes and student athletes. For you, what is the kind of value that you guys see as far as, building in the digital space and for the Web3 space as well? And just for you, how important do you think having a digital presence in today's age, and how we're moving into a more bankless kind of society, very technologically driven society? Just where do you guys see the value in that for any types of athletes or esports athletes?
Yeah, certainly. So I think, the future and just investment in technology in the sports industry is massive, especially for the next kind of generation of athletes. I think when you think about, Web3 and NFTs and student athletes specifically, those of us that are college sports fans or professional fans, we really have that one team or that one college that we went to that we follow. So I think fandom in sports is really, important to think about with this question, because I'm a fan of a musician. I can be fans of multiple musicians. I can be a fan of multiple movies, multiple TV shows. But with sports, the ability to leverage Web3 technology and NFTs in a digital space and cultivate that fandom really specifically, I think is going to be the future. And I think student athletes are becoming more and more innovative. I think the first 2 years of NIL, a lot of the key learnings is understanding taxes, understanding financial literacy, investing. But now that the basics and the foundation is there, I think crypto, NFT technology in the future can definitely be a part of that experience.
I think the biggest misconception is that it's easier, that Web3 and this new technology makes it easier. I think people don't realize that without the middleman, there's a lot of great things that middlemen can do, but it's a lot of the luggage that you don't have to actually deal with yourself as a creator or an athlete. So 2 of my clients that I represent, one of them is Booga and Clicks. They're 2 of the biggest names in Fortnite and esports. I think what's really cool about NIL, that I think if you ask some of the athletes, they are so uncomfortable doing the deals that they're getting, because this is the first time that they're actually forced to be a content creator, and they can't just be an athlete. And being an athlete and then complaining that you don't have enough money, now that you can actually get money, you actually have to do the things necessary in order to actually cultivate an audience. So whether it be esports athletes, whatever it is, it's just influential people on the internet that have a community. Being able to, 1, actually care about your community, but 2, you actually have to do the work. It's taking your audience off platforms. And I think that's the biggest opportunity, but that also brings with it a lot of work. And I don't think the work is talked about enough. It's, A couple of my clients have 15 to 20,000 people that watch them every single night on Twitch. When that live stream goes off, so does the community. They have no access to that Twitch community. Then they have to go onto Twitter and they talk to an entirely different community. And they go to Instagram and they talk to an entirely different community. And then there's a new app that comes out that we all have to get. Your community is so segmented. Being able to take your community off these platforms so that they just become content engines, but they don't become where your community lives. Whether you're an esports athlete or whoever it might be, I think that's the biggest opportunity. But it has the asterisk that says, but it's gonna be a shit ton harder to do that versus just using someone else's platform to talk to your audience.
Absolutely. I think, yeah, you hit the nail on the head right there as far as just looking at it not being just a quick and easy thing to enter, get rich quick kind of scheme as far as entering the space. And so just to follow up on that for maybe any athletes or any sports organizations, you know, we've seen some NBA players, some NFL players kind of dabble in this space, but for some athlete who's maybe interested in, you know, entering the space but doesn't necessarily know where to start, and this is open to anyone on the panel, as far as just getting kind of the information, where would you recommend them to look for it, and kind of how would you recommend them to, you know, dip their toes within the space?
I just want to jump in and then I'll leave it for someone else, sorry. But the idea of like, I think first comes first is you have to understand that you're gonna have a community and you have to create content and you have to be accessible and you have to actually take the time to care. Before I can give you what the technology is to use, you actually have to understand that your behavior has to change. I think if you can actually change people's behavior, then it becomes easier to give them the tools to do it. But everyone is focusing on the tech and the tools, and they're not worrying about the human that actually has to create a video piece of content for that community that they're creating for. That NFT project that gives them access. If I'm an athlete, John can't run my community for me. The community is there for me. You have to do the work. So I think it's training the human before you sell them the tech.
I really think I would advise players to like go and use Web3, like create a wallet, go try to do something in DeFi. I know it takes, there's a learning curve there, but there's no better way to learn than by doing. So I always encourage people, even people in Web3, right? Like people will talk about insurance protocols and all these different things, but sometimes they're not even using them or haven't even tried them. So I'm a huge, I try to be a super user in anything I ever talk about or I try to do, actually participate. And I think that'll help give great insight into maybe part of just the crypto community an athlete could reach as well, not just their athletic community or fan base.
Yeah, I think a big thing that we try to instill in student athletes when we go to campus is, you know, capitalize on those moments of momentum, but be prepared for it. So set those resources, you know, set your social media presence and be prepared for that big win, that big moment in March, and then you can capitalize and monetize, and you're ready for that moment.
And just kind of a follow-up onto that as well for you, Sean, as far as in the NIL space, you know, when you meet up with either these collectives or directly with these student athletes, how do you go as far as just the education aspect within the space, and how do you go about that process?
Yeah, certainly. I think, you know, the most exciting thing about NIL to me is the ability to develop professionally, because, you know, 98% of the athletes, the student athletes, are not going to move, you know, to the next level. So I think, you know, college athletics is here to set the stage for the rest of their life for these athletes, and now name, image, and likeness is a part of that. So it's really, you know, exciting to see student athletes engage with businesses, engage with these collectives, understand how to learn and read contracts, how to, you know, introduce themselves, how to shake someone's hand, how to meet people from different walks of life. That's the most exciting thing to me when it comes to NIL, and those are some principles that we try to teach student athletes, along with how to use our technology to report deals, to stay compliant with their schools, their state legislations, etc. But I think the best thing about NIL is really that professional development capability now that these young men and women can do starting at age 18 on campus.
And so I think, you know, obviously everyone here, I think, is aware of, you know, NFTs and just different NFT projects and kind of that use case, especially in the sports aspect. But just for the panel, in your opinion, the next, you know, 5 to 10 years, say, what are some of the best or, you know, future use cases that you see that will be relevant is when it comes to, you know, Web3 and sports?
a little bit of what you talked on, Sean. We were just talking about a former Duke player that was here. It's taking advantage of your opportunity, and that 99.8% of all collegiate athletes will never play their sport after they graduate. Like, I don't know if that's status right, Sean, but nonetheless, it proves my point. But it's the idea that you're here now, and you're a big deal when you're on Duke's campus. And whether you're the last guy on the bench or the walk-on, like Brennan Besser is a friend of mine who, like, he was a walk-on kid at the end, but everyone loved him. He could have capitalized on his relevancy now with this level of technology that doesn't necessarily benefit you from a player side, but if you do have this level of an NFT while you're on campus in some way, shape, or form, you have this community. So when you do graduate, that person that owned your NFT from Duke is gonna go on and be the CEO of a company, and he might still own that asset in some way, and you have some level of built-up equity inside of that community that once used to love you as a player, but now you can love them as a human being. So I think there's this realm of thinking about, even look at professional athletes in this whole, going broke era that we've been living in right now. They become irrelevant. And some of it is on them, some of it is on the team, some of them is on you can point your finger at a lot of people, but I think this level of technology becomes very impactful when you think of whatever the average amount of years are that professional athletes play. It's 4 years in the NBA. You're still very relevant, and you had really passionate fans. And as soon as you become a retired athlete, you become a retired athlete. And people look at you differently than if you're an actually active athlete. But your community can live on. So how do you have some level of data and a community that lives outside of the Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday live broadcast of your sports game, and lives outside of the followers on all these different social media platforms, not just thinking of fans and signed jerseys and playing experiences, but investment opportunities, communities to tap into for crypto. You have your own little alumni database that has followed your journey throughout your entire career that lives past your playing days.
Yeah. I'll also add, specific to Web3, if you look at the top 20 DAOs, most of the protocols are DeFi protocols and gaming projects, etc. You have one kind of entertainment project, Audius and music in the top 20. And I think there's some really exciting sports opportunities coming that will kind of emerge into Web3. And one in particular is called Karate DAO. I don't know if anyone's seen the sport Karate Combat. Anybody yet? It's really cool. I mean, obviously UFC's been a big hit recently, and Karate Combat is a very serious fighting league. They have the pit. You can see Hidera Hashgraph sponsored in the pit, and it's really, I know not everyone maybe loves Bloodsport, but it's very exciting. They have millions of views on YouTube. They're really approaching the millennial generation, Gen Z, in TikTok shorts and those types of things. So sign up for the airdrop. I think it happens next month. They're having a fight at Bitcoin Miami. It should be super exciting. But I really think that's like a project that could break into the top 20 DAOs. And sports is such a big part of our culture and lives. Just like NFTs brought artists and all types of different communities to the Web3 space, sports has the same potential. We could bring a whole nother world, global world, the sports or global into the Web3 space. So I think it has great potential in that way.
And so, John, I wanted to ask you, the work that you're doing on Real App, and as far as, I think one potential use case that I think will be very valuable in the long term is the collection of data, and just whether it be on the blockchain or just having that, transactions show that and be able to collect that. But for you, what you're doing with Real, could you kind of speak as far as the process of how you obtain the data for the sports that you do, currently work with, as far as, basketball or any of the other sports, and also just why, collecting this data, in your opinion, for what you do in sports tech, why it's so valuable to what you're doing and for your community and your audience as well.
Yeah, so we work with their official data providers for all 4 major US sports. There's 2 main ones, Genius Sports and Sports Radar. I think the beauty of data is how fast it is. It's low latency and it's super contextual. So something that gets us super excited. I mean, we're collecting data from the angle of we're amplifying it for consumption. So it's all play-by-play data that we're amplifying and putting at the forefront of our platform. And I think what gets us excited is the data is only getting better. It's only getting more contextual, and it feels like you're watching these games live. So I like describing Real as like a stadium in your pocket. We inform fans around anything that happens in sports, every live sports moment, like I was saying earlier. And I think one use case that we're excited for is the ability to collect any moment. And I think something Top Shot did pretty well was they had these curated sets of moments where they did everything right. They had, and so same with So Rare, they do everything right. They have all the legal media deals with the NBA, the rights deals, but something that they're lacking in, just to be transparent, something they're lacking is the community and the need. Like, I'm not going to go to So Rare to understand what's happening in the NBA. I'm also not going to go to Top Shot to understand what's happening in the NBA. But I think that's where we excel, is we inform and then we engage. And I think being that platform of we're informing people through data, and then we're also allowing them to, in the same platform, engage and collect, predict through polls and challenges. And so I think there's a lot to be said about, with how fast betting has changed. It has allowed data to be super fast, because all these betting companies, they need very low latency data for the lines to be accurate. So we're just using data in a completely different use case. We're using it so you can we're just using it as a way to consume, and then we're adding all the engagement on top of it. So yeah, I think there's a lot. Data is super valuable, and it's only getting better. Like, I think, like, long term, like, enough data to feel like you're simulate a game, and then we wouldn't even need to do deals with, to get the rights deals that are tens of millions or billions of dollars.
I was just saying, data is boring
Yeah, so
in and of itself.
Yeah, 100%.
But it's the way that you purpose data to consumers
Yeah.
that makes Real so valuable. I think that's in general, like when we talk about technology or whatever it is. And NFT is the most boring possible thing, and it has like that realm of, making bags and pumps and dumps and all this other stuff. But what you can do with it from a consumption, consumer, community standpoint is what makes you different from some of the other projects.
Yeah, data is just line items. But then we make it colorful. That's the cool part about Real. Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely think just as far as, repackaging it, whether it be, with data or like NFTs, like definitely I'd say just even people using the phrase and the term, like using data, like I feel like that's kind of been a newer kind of thing that's just been associated or integrated just within just kind of business talk or business jargon. But I wanted to ask Barry, just on the investment side, obviously Web3 is kind of its own realm or arena versus like more traditional business models. So like when you're going to invest or you're looking at a potential project to invest into, is there any sort of principles that you have, and are they different than say you would have for a more traditional investment model or investment project?
Yeah, I think just being in the space for a decade now, narratives are so powerful for this space. It may not be what's fundamentally the best tech, and I know that can be sad, but what really gets attention? The world is so starved for attention. Everyone's trying to get attention now. And a perfect example recently would be, AI projects. Some of these crypto AI projects that have been around, and even how real they are. They've been around, and they were kind of not doing anything until ChatGPT came out, and they all went up 10x. So I think narratives are really powerful in the space, and just attention on projects. I think there are also a lot of great projects. If you're a developer and you're building a project, make sure you get attention on your project. I know people think just shilling everything, but I've seen a lot of great projects, but it's just developers building and no one knows what they've created. It can be really beneficial for the space. So always looking at kind of what's cool, if you will. I know that sounds kind of lame sometimes, but it's very real in how at least I've been successful in investing in the space.
Yeah, and I feel like, with a lot of these NFT projects, it takes, just one kind of 10x or 100x for someone to feel as if they're an investment guru at that point, just with how, fluid this space is as far as, with the pump and dumps and just having this generational wealth be accumulated in a matter of like minutes or weeks, days, like just with some of these projects. But for me, I wanted to ask the panel as far as not only the education side of Web3, how important it is, but also, especially with athletes, like them understanding the full kind of objective viewpoint. I think everyone in this room is obviously, you know, an advocate of the Web3 space and NFTs and things of that nature, but I think we all also are aware of, you know, just the negative and the bad characters within the space. And so for me, just helping to educate the athletes, you know, could any of you kind of touch on, you know, what education they need and just both the positive and negatives that they need to understand?
Yeah, I think from our perspective, education is number one. It's really important to us for athletes to understand implications of NIL deals from taxes, again, financial literacy. And I think anything that's new for athletes, there's a certain level of education that goes across all the constituents that touch that athlete, you know, their entire entourage, especially, you know, in the pro space. So we certainly try to, you know, look at educating the school administrative staff. I think in this space specifically, in the future, educating agents, ensuring that they're fully educated on, you know, the NFT, Web3 space, if their athletes are going to engage in that, is really important. And I think making it as easy as possible for athletes, just because especially student athletes already have so much on their plate when it comes to academics, internships, looking for jobs, and trying to perform, you know, their best in the field, and that's, you know, really most important. But yeah, trying to make it as easy as possible and educate everybody that surrounds an athlete is number one and paramount for us.
Something you hit on that's really unique, which is going to completely change the entire industry, is the idea of like, you're going to educate the agents, but agents aren't going to like it. And you're kind of putting, I mean, it's similar like the music industry right now. It's, you know, labels are on fire behind their closed doors, wondering how they're going to take a piece because there's so many middlemen a part of it. So, you know, a follower on a social media account doesn't necessarily exchange any revenue or value between fan and player, but agents want a cut of all that revenue that comes in. So if an athlete is a freshman, sophomore, junior, goes to the league and they have this ongoing economy of their community, does the agent get 20% of that, like a Pepsi or Coke deal? I don't know what that looks like, but I think companies like Teamworks is really interesting because you're hitting on it at a very early stage, which I know a little bit of, like the professional athletes don't necessarily, the pro sports agents don't like that as much because they're concerned that that's a piece of their revenue, but it's the best thing for the athlete, cutting out those middlemen. To answer your question regarding what they can do about it, I think, again, I would continue to go back to the idea of focusing on what you can do with it, not just having it. I think, like, similar to data is nothing until you know what to do with it, and NFT is nothing unless you know what to do with it as a creator. So I think a lot of the NFT projects that have been put onto the shoulders of athletes have just been, here's money to promote a product, but not understanding what the value is of that product when somebody actually buys it. If you have your own NFT, it should be free, essentially, because you're just trying to get access to a community of people, but we're not selling the value of it. We've been historic the last couple of years just selling the thing. And I think moving forward is understanding what do you want to do, and then reverse engineering why an NFT as a piece of technology between you and another human makes the most sense for your interaction with them.
And so one of the main values that I see for these athletes is a lot of them have, you know, a lot of a built-in audience or community, whether it be from their own social medias or from the umbrellas of these certain leagues they play for, whether it be NCAA for college athletes or NBA, NHL, NFL for professional athletes. So for someone or athlete that's starting their own project and maybe has an audience, but maybe they're not a crypto native audience, so to speak, how do they go about, you know, engaging their fans and having them be interested in their project and essentially just helping to kind of elite or integrate kind of that mass adoption within the space?
Yeah, I can kind of jump in, start. I mean, I think something that they could leverage is Discord. I think it's like an easy platform to find or to cultivate a community, because a lot of these athletes, they have like followers that will go in the Discord, and then you can weed out who the true fans are through a lot of engagement factors within just like regular Discord. So I think that's like one way. The other way too is for them to just engage with, or like talk to them on Twitter, reply to followers, like engage with them, actually feel like have a connection. Because I feel like these athletes, they somewhat put themselves on a pedestal, which is, I mean, they should, because they only have so much time in the day. But I think going down to the people level and really understanding what do my fans, like what do I want to get out of my fans, and like just talk with them. And I think a lot of athletes miss that opportunity of being able to just understand who their fans are and talking with them and developing just like that. I think it's important to care, and then you can shill them whatever your product is or NFT is. But first they have to cultivate that. That first step is cultivating a community versus, oh, I have this NFT and then I'm just gonna throw it out to my followers. It's like two different sides of that, for sure.
Barry, can you hit on a little bit, we talked about it last night at the happy hour with Karate Combat, if people are familiar with that, but the ability that they're using this new technology that in the UFC, if I want to bet on a fight, I have to download a sports book. And Vegas has set a line for me, and someone else is creating the market for me to bet on. Are you comfortable talking about a little bit of what Karate Combat is doing, where it's the idea of they've got an ICO and a token launch, and if John and Barry are duking it out in Karate Combat, I can put my coin on John, and there's a market being set by the community themselves, but John gets a cut of that. And I think this realm of how much money is being flown in Vegas for the fighters themselves in the UFC, and you talk about Jake Paul and all these people that are talking about fighter appreciation and revenue and income, it's such an entrepreneurial sport that they're not actually getting the overall value out of their career, where we used to represent Sean O'Malley, who is a big UFC. I mean, when he was fighting and creating all this buzz, he wasn't getting paid a lot at all. Because he had a contract with the UFC, even though all my friends made money on betting with him, but he didn't get a cut out of all that revenue. So anyways, Barry, I know you're a little closer to it.
No, yeah, I mean, you spoke to it really well. I think there's some ideas with Karate Combat of sort of no-loss betting and kind of revenue share more for the fighter, and just aligning everyone, sort of win-win-win. It's not just all going to the owners of UFC, right? Like you can be a fighter and build your community and fans and earn more from that if you win your fight. And the fan can have a positive outcome in that as well in a fun way. The other thing I think is huge that we talked about too is just, blockchain takes out the middleman. We talk about that all the time. I mean, sports betting is massive and it's global. And why not? There's some protocols. There's a protocol, I believe it's called Lunify, where you can be the house. Why wouldn't I want to be the casino? Why wouldn't I want to be the house? I can stake my money and earn a yield there as the house. And maybe I'm betting as well on horse racing or whatever it is. So there's massive opportunities there, and I don't think have really reached their potential in any way. And obviously that requires people, using DraftKings, all these Web2 platforms to make that migration. But I think there's a lot of opportunity there.
I just want to jump in because I think it's super interesting, and just to now end on, because this is where I get really excited about. But even like a campus like Duke, I don't know what's the monetary currency when you go into like the Duke store, like a Duke point,
Just
food points and stuff. They have a currency exchange to a dollar, but in and of itself, it's not a dollar, right? So you think of like, could Web3 create that market for the Cameron Crazies to be betting on the game that night in some way, shape, or form? And obviously everyone's gonna bet for Duke, but you get what I'm saying. You create this really fun, engaging marketplace that has some level of interoperability with a token, a coin that doesn't have to have a monetary value, but if you win that night, you get to exchange that for something at the merch store, and you get to exchange that for food at the Commons, whatever that might be. But you've created your own marketplace on campus that I think is a whole different opportunity that really onboards the education side when you go into a campus. What a great way to get people onboarded as part of your freshman orientation is getting set up in this really gamified economy of a campus that hits on all these different components. The loyalty marketing side, what I think blockchain can provide is really impactful, and that hits on Teamworks as well with the relationship between athletes and those fans. Could they get a cut out of those winnings that people are betting on their overs? I think we're getting into a kind of that might not be the best thing to do, but nonetheless, it's a really cool connection that you can start to create on campus.
Yeah, I definitely think the loyalty aspect is a huge kind of driver for that, and kind of another kind of project I kind of visualize is like similar to, there's the brotherhood for obviously all the Duke basketball players, and then in the summers you see a lot of current and former players come back to volunteer as far as like the Coach K camps where like people can buy. They obviously paid to come be a part of playing in Cameron Indoor or things like that. So seeing that could be turned into, instead of you paying for the opportunity to come, but you pay to buy say an NFT, and that's like your access to the camp, and then say you're able to hold that and be able to flip it or sell it to for the next year to someone else who might wants to come, and then having kind of the revenue generated and the royalties generated for that, have like some type of fund for athletes to be able to build that up into like a brotherhood fund, or like a Duke athletic fund or something like that, and be able to have value as far as not only them coming back and giving their time, but also financially being able to benefit and give more to them to push forward outside of just helping support Coach K and helping to support Duke basketball or Duke athletics for whatever the case may be. But Darren, I also wanted to ask you, just I think one of the main drivers of the space is definitely going to be as far as like GameFi and just gaming, blockchain, obviously sports betting as well. So I know you obviously work with a lot of esports individuals like Bryson, I see him as well. Mentioned a lot of the kind of value within GameFi, but for you in the kind of sports and gaming world, how do you see just the future progressions of GameFi, how it progresses within Web3?
I think it's the fastest way is to split GameFi. Gamifying something is not a video game.
Right.
Like, it disrespects a multi-billion-dollar marketplace of people building very intricate video games. I'm a little bit of an outsider to the Web3, and I like it because I get to step outside every once in a while, but like I hate the connection. It cheapens everything involved. So I think gamifying things is really unique. That's the idea of creating a marketplace on campus you can bet and create earnings for Duke points. I think that's a great loyalty marketing is basically gamifying things. You're just creating your own marketplace that doesn't necessarily have monetary value. In the gaming space in and of itself, a ton of athletes, every sports league is trying to connect with Gen Z. So I think using gaming as a vehicle is what I get very excited about. It's why I've been passionate around gaming, is because it's not a destination. You don't end up in the game. You're using gaming to do something out of it. Just talking with Joey Baker last night. He stays connected with his other teammates via playing video games. It's a way to connect with people. It's a way to put yourself in the position to just interact with other human beings in a video game where you've got things that you need to accomplish together. So gaming in and of itself is just a very good way to cultivate community. It's a vehicle for that, but it's a bold line between gamifying and actually playing Fortnite in a video game. There's a pretty clear difference, but it's a great way for, as the startup company that I work for, athletes to connect with fans via playing video games. Not just John and I connecting playing Fortnite together, but it's John connecting with Zach Levine to play Warzone together. That's a really cool environment to connect versus what people pay now, which is your 16 seconds to get a signature and the athlete gives you the fake smile and the handshake and keep it moving. Like, that's great and all, but what if you could actually be doing something with them? And I think that interactivity between fans and athletes, video games provide such a cool experience for that. Whether you're playing with them or against them, just the fact that you're involved in something that they're doing really just amplifies that engagement with your fans.
Well, I see we're running close on time, so I want to open up questions to the audience if anyone has any questions.
Yeah, it's going to be for Darren. So a buddy of mine is a sports agent for coaches. So LaFleur, McVay, and I think a lot of when we talk about sports, coaches kind of get lost in this. You see Dion, HBCUs, even Ed Reed, AAU basketball, youth football. I mean, there's a lot of coaches that potentially could, monetize. So are you seeing any momentum outside of the players into coaches that, coalesce the youth, men's, women's sports to bring them up and have them be,
Yeah, I mean, it's what makes the ones that are doing it do it so well. But I think it's because they themselves enjoy the moment of being the spotlight. I think a lot of coaches historically have always been where's the coach? He's behind the closed door watching film all day. They're not historically inherently great at being out there like Showtime. But I think to your exact point, there's an absolutely, like, the opportunity to monetize as a coach. I mean, you see a lot of, what's the guy's name? Chris, it's like these social media coaches. I mean, like, the biggest players are now working out with people that are influencers online. So, like, even if they're not specifically a coach, just the opportunity, as we all know, coaches don't get paid a lot. Like, you don't get paid until you're 40 and you finally get your head coaching job, but you have 20 years of just like eating it and eating it and eating it. How do you monetize yourself on social media and start to create a community around it to then utilize as your resume to say, listen, I'm coaching 5,000 people every single week on a Discord community because I have 5,000 different NFTs and people that get access to my private classes. I mean, it goes all across the board. It turns coaches and mentors into influencers, but you don't have to only be a coach for your local team. You're now a coach to the world. Now it's up to cultivating that world and then using that resume to then get that head coaching job.
Thank you. Any other questions? Okay, well, I want to, again, thank all the panelists that joined me today and just
Thank you, Ether.
for the opportunity here to, pour back into Duke. That's, done a lot for me, and it's been a big part of, myself and my family for as long as I can remember. And so, again, just grateful for the opportunity, and just thank you everyone for tuning in and just helping to be a part of this panel.
Well, thank you all. This was a really fascinating panel, so I'm sure everyone enjoyed it as much as I did. We'll now break for lunch at Fox. So stop by, grab something to eat, and then we'll reconvene in Janine at 1. So grab something to eat and see you in a bit.
Get together. By the way, David just texted me. His flight just landed, so he apologizes.
When was that?
Portrait mode.